Happy spring break, class. You guys are working on your project pitches for next week. You have some ideas percolating in your brain. You may have a well-formulated idea or an idea that is pretty rough at this point. I was going through the lab and I found this bin full of sensors. And so I want to go through some of these sensors and talk about what they are and what they do. And maybe that will be useful for some of you as you continue to formulate your project pitches. All right, so let's get started. Our first sensor, what does that look like to you? A joystick? It's exactly what it is. It's a joystick. It has an X and a Y. It's actually analog. It's an analog joystick. Look at that. You can move it up, down, left, and right. And so it's got a power pin, a ground pin, and two other pins which give you a voltage for the X and the Y position. So you can then correlate that with position and use this to control, to provide input, or to control a servo or something like that. All right, let's see what else we got. This is a digital temperature sensor. I got a lot of different varieties of digital temperature sensors and analog temperature sensors. All right, next. This is a reed switch. So a reed switch, R-E-E-D, is a, can't really see that, maybe we get closer. Inside that little glass cylinder is a little filament of metal, and when you bring that metal close to a magnet, it'll close the switch, and you can detect that switch closing. So you could use this for like a burglar alarm. If you had a magnet on your windowsill, and that windowsill opens, the switch will open. When that magnet goes away, you can detect the window is open. All right, let me see what else I got here. All right, ready for the next batch? This is a humidity sensor. So you can use this to measure humidity. And it looks like it's just got 3 pins, so it must, I think it's an analog device. The voltage it encodes corresponds to some level of humidity. This is a IR, infrared sensing photodiode. And so these things are built into electronics that use infrared modulated signals from like remote controls to detect signals from remote controls. But you can also use these things to detect flames and fire. So you can also pair these with an infrared emitting LED. And so here's an LED. I don't think this one's infrared emitting, but I have infrared emitting LEDs, and if you pair one up with this thing, then you have a signal and a sensor for that signal simultaneously. Okay, fire detector, infrared photodiode. All right, let's see what else we got. Any guesses? It's a laser. It's a laser. It's a little diode laser. So actually, I have a slew of these as well. We have to take apart my laser heart, that project from a few years ago that I showed you. But I have about 8 of those in the lab, and we can get more. This thing, you see there's a little bead of mercury inside that glass tube. It's a tilt switch. So when the device gets tilted, that mercury sloshes back and forth and closes the switch. So you can use this to detect motion, like whether a lid is open or closed, for example. And then I have other tilt switches here. These actually have an LED built in, so when the switch is closed, the light can turn on. And I have 2 of those paired together. Okay. So little mercury switches. All right, what else do I got? This is a touch sensor. There's a little piece of metal on this chip right here. Touch that, and it can sense that you're touching it. So it's a touch sensor. Here's a little microphone for measuring small sounds, detecting small sounds. And here is, well, there's a photocell. We've played with those before. Here's another reed switch, where it can detect magnetic fields. Speaking of magnetic fields, somewhere in here I have, here, I think this is it. So this chip right here is a Hall sensor, and it detects magnetic fields. So you can pair this with a magnet, and when the magnet is close by, it'll know that the magnet is close by. Hall sensor. And I have some of these sensors, Hall sensors. This is a I believe this is an analog Hall sensor, so it'll detect, it'll produce a voltage in proportion to the strength of the magnetic field in its vicinity. I also have a Hall sensor, which is a latch type Hall sensor, and it'll detect when a magnetic field toggles on and off in its vicinity. All right, okay, here's two interesting sensor modules. This one has infrared LED paired with an infrared detector pointing in the same direction. So when the infrared light is on, it shines infrared light that then reflects off of objects that are nearby. So this is, you can think of this as a proximity sensor. It allows you to detect whether you're close to an object. So as I get closer to the computer screen here, the amount of reflected light will increase, and then the signal that's being detected will increase. So you could use this in a robot to avoid collisions, because it'll allow you to detect when you're close to a barrier, an obstacle. And so this one's similar. What this does is it'll actually, I've seen these on the bottom of robots, and they'll allow the robot to track like a black line, and the way that works is you have an emitter and a detector here, and the emitter emits light that gets absorbed by black pigments, so it won't be reflected, so it'll know when it's over top of black pigments. You'll be able to detect that. All right, what else do I got? Push button, got a push button switch. I got a ton of those. There's an RGB LED, got a ton of those. Here's another RGB LED, just SMD, surface mount chip component design. This one, it only has 3 pins, so it must only have 2 colors. I don't know what 2 colors it produces, but it's a 2-color LED. Here's another 2-color LED. And what else do I got here? Well, I have 3 things here that are mysteries to me at this point. I got this thing. It's got a little blue piece of plastic. Oh, ooh, I hear it clicking. So this is a ball switch. It is kind of like that mercury switch. There's a little ball in there that rolls back and forth, and on one side it'll close a switch, and on the other side it'll open a switch. So it can be a tilt sensor or a vibration sensor. This is a tap switch. Ooh. So it measures impacts. It'll detect little impacts like that. It's got a little coil of wire in there that detects those vibrations. This is a little switch that will detect if I get a piece of paper and put that paper between the arms of that little piece of plastic, it'll detect that light is blocked between there, and so it can detect that. It'll detect a signal like that, a light blocking signal. Oh man. Alright, I got a few more goodies here. In this bag, I have Don't know what those are. Don't know what those are. But I know what these are. These are rotary encoders. So get one out here so you can see it a little better. So it's got a rotary knob on here, and as you rotate it, the position of the rotary dial is encoded by a signal that comes out of this board. So if you read that signal, you know where the dial is positioned. So you could use these for providing input into a project. Wow, well, I have a whole nother box here of different sensors. Let's see what we got in here. Well, there's another rotary dial, touch sensor, buzzer, microphone, light sensor, no idea. Ooh, now this looks interesting. No idea. Relay, push button, LCD display, and what else do we got in here? A shield for an Arduino so you can hook all these sensors up at once. Okay, so I got a bunch of these kits in lab. They're called the Grove starter kits. I got a bunch of these. Well, not a bunch. I got like 3 of these chock full of sensors. All right, let me take one more look. Maybe I'll go figure out what this is and get back to you. All right, figured out what this is. It's incredibly boring. It's a little tiny socket for an LED, so you can plug an LED into those 2 little holes there, and awesome. It's got a little variable resistor built into it, so you can provide the proper current limiting resistance as well. So it's a little light socket. All right, so that's a lot of different sensors. Of course, I've showed you other ones in the lab already that you can use, and I told you to browse the websites. 3 of my favorites are sparkfun.com, SPARKFUN, all one word.com. Another great one is Adafruit, ADAFRUIT.com, and Seed Studio, SEEDSTUDIO.com. Go to those websites, browse the sensor sections, and see what's out there. They have blogs. You can read about projects that other people are doing to get ideas. And the only way to know what's possible is to explore. All right, so enjoy your spring break, and I'll see you next week.